Thank you for joining us for the English Learner Community of Practice number 2 for the 24-25 school year. This is Connecting English Language Development and Tennessee Academic Standards, and it's the first part of a two-part series. This series is designed with ESL specialists as well as classroom teachers, instructional coaches, school administrators, and/or district leaders in mind. This session is designed to engage educators with professional learning topics to be used standalone or even as small group learning. English learners are supported by the Tennessee Department of Education through the Office of Academics Division of Special Education and Student Supports. The student support team is headed currently by Joanne Runyon, Senior Director of Student Supports. And my name is Raven Cleveland. I'm the Senior Coordinator of English Learners. This community practice session is offered as part of the English Learner Ongoing Plan. Our English Learner Plan is one part of the overall strategic plan for the department. Our community practice sessions are for instructional development for all levels of educators working with English learners. If you have questions or concerns regarding ESL rule, policies, instructional learning plans, scheduling, assessment, or other inquiries, we will provide contact information at the end of the session so that you can receive additional support or learn about other learning opportunities. Take a moment now to read the disclaimer regarding generative AI tools. Currently, generative AI tools are not permissible by the Tennessee Department of Education. The Tennessee Department of Education, or TDOE, is a guiding agency, so please keep in mind as we provide the support the purpose of these communities of practice. We're going to start with a topic of concern, and then we will discuss ways in which this concern or challenges can be mitigated. Please hold from taking any one slide out of context until the conclusion of the presentation, in which we've had an opportunity to explore the solutions. Our goal is to discuss best practices, guidelines, and strategies that organize, manage, and steward the resources from which educators can draw. Our goal is also to provide support for educators so that all English learners reach English language proficiency. For ESL educators, we know that providing intensive language instruction based on research-backed best practices, student English language acquisition and proficiency is accelerated. We seek to enable English learners to cultivate the linguistic competencies essential for achieving academic proficiency across diverse subject areas through solid ESL instruction. We also provide support for our general content teachers. This highlights the importance of delivering rigorous content instruction that is accessible and meaningful to English learners. By integrating language development strategies and scaffolds into content classrooms, we can ensure that English learners have equitable access to standards-based grade-level academic content. We seek to foster deeper understanding and engagement among English learners in all subject areas. Take a moment now to look at our learning and language objectives for this session. We're going to compare and contrast Tennessee ELA academic and Tennessee ELD standards. We also want to understand how to connect both sets of these standards. And then we'll explore some practical strategies to highlight standards in our planning cycles. Although this community practice is comprehensible without last month's session, we seek to build knowledge for ESL educators through this series. In the previous session, we discussed the Tennessee K-12 Knowledge Building Instructional Practice Guide, also known as the IPG. The Instructional Practice Guide discusses how core instruction lessons can build knowledge through the use of high-quality instructional materials. Lessons that are text-based, lessons that focus on rigorous tasks, strategic questioning, and deep engagement for students, all aligned to reading, writing, listening, and speaking standards. The IPG is also designed as a K-12 classroom observation rubric that prioritizes what is observable in and expected of classroom instruction when instructional content that is aligned to Tennessee academic state standards are used. This document provides look-fors for purposely limited instructional practices that are expected to be seen in classrooms. You don't have to use every strategy you've ever learned, just these simple ones. The four categories are around the culture of learning, environmental readiness, core action 1, which is high quality text at the center of instruction. I'll also refer to that as HQIM. Core Action 2, effective use of questions and tasks. Core Action 3, opportunities for student engagement. And our new Core Action 4, high quality instructional material access for all. We hope you have a moment to see last month's presentation. The recorded session will be available through the Tennessee Department of Education COP resources. So let's get started talking about how we can connect English language development and Tennessee academic standards, starting with an overview of the Tennessee academic standards. It's important for ESL educators to recognize that it is the academic standards that inform the content of instruction for English learners, for all students. It defines what students are learning, whereas ELD standards really think about how students are using language to demonstrate their learning of these standards. The Tennessee academic standards provide a common set of expectation about what students will be learning. It is the way to establish, measure, and improve instruction in the classroom. They are determinations of what students should know and be able to do across subjects and grade levels, sometimes called content standards, and these can cover skills such as adding and subtracting within 100, or content, like understanding the roles of the three branches of government. The use of standards is important. It assumes that all students, including English learners, are capable of meeting high expectations. It is important for all ESL educators to recognize that it is the academic standards that inform the content of instruction for English learners. It defines what students are learning, whereas, again, ELD standards really think about how students are using that language to demonstrate their learning of these contents. Standards are not high quality instructional materials, although they should be deeply connected. They don't outline the day-to-day lessons and activities teachers use. Rather, they provide an end goal for instruction. The high-quality instructional material provides the medium to achieve those expectations. So let's take just a moment to ground ourselves in some second language acquisition understandings about language learning. BICS, or Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills, and CALP, which is Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency, are both acronyms that refer to the English language learners need to develop conversationally and grade appropriate proficiency in English necessary to be successful in the classroom. So now that we know that, let's take a look at the Tennessee English Language Development Standards. Adopted in August of 2024, the new Tennessee ELD standards are here to stay. All learners, but especially English learners, face learning effective academic uses of language, also known as CALP, while simultaneously learning academic content and skills with and through that language. This can be especially challenging for students learning a new language. To fully and successfully participate in school, English learners must simultaneously acquire English language proficiency and achieve academically across content areas. English language development standards act as a starting point for identifying the language that English learners must develop to successfully access and negotiate content in and beyond the classroom. ELP standards do not stand alone, but provide the bridge to those content area standards we talked about, expected of all students. The new standards will provide a framework for English learners to acquire the content knowledge and English language proficiency needed for meaningful learning and communication. These standards correspond to the Tennessee State academic standards with a focus on college and career readiness. They reflect a shift in focus from language possession to language use within the content areas. This means gone are the days where instruction is rote vocabulary or grammar drills. Instead, we're going to focus on language functions necessary to deeply engage in the content with their English speaking peers. There are only 10 standards. They focus on receptive, productive, and interactive skills. And again, take that functional approach over communication over correctness. If you hadn't had an opportunity to examine this document, take a moment now to pause and pull the document of the Tennessee ELD standards for your reference. The 10 standards are organized in relation to participation in content area practices, and standards 1 through 7 build on language functions necessary in the content classroom. The standards are not content specific, but they explicitly recognize that language acquisition takes place across the content areas. It also fosters collaboration among educators and benefits English learners' learning experiences. At present, second language development is seen largely as the responsibility of the ESL or ELD teacher, while content development as that of the subject area teacher. Given these new standards, explicitness and how language must be used to enact disciplinary knowledge and skills, such a strict division of labor is no longer viable. Content area teachers must understand and leverage the language and literacy practice found in science, mathematics, history, social studies, and the language arts to enhance students' engagement with rich content and fuel their academic performance. ESL or ELD teachers must help cultivate a deeper knowledge of the disciplinary language that ELs need and help their students to grow in using it. Collaboration and sharing of expertise are really needed among ESL and content area teachers at the secondary level. Additionally, alignment and integration are needed across ESL and ELD subject matter teachers, learning objectives, curriculum, lesson planning, high quality instructional materials that teachers prepare and deliver to their students. You take a look, the first 7 standards highlight a strategic set of language function. Language functions are what students do with language to accomplish content-specific tasks. And the last 2 are specific language functions that speak to the collective forms, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse specific to a particular content area or discipline, which are needed by English learners as they develop competence and practices associated with English. Standard 8 addresses the word phrase dimension, looking at social and academic vocabulary, usage, and the specificity of word or phrase choice. Examples include general, specific, and technical language, multiple meanings of words and phrases, nuances and shades of meaning, and collocations and idioms. Just to restate, the 10 new English language development standards are designed for collaborative use by ESL, ELD, and content area teachers in both English language development and content area instruction. They highlight and amplify the critical language skills necessary to be successful in school and in life. For educators, coaches, and administrators, the standards also align to the instructional practice guide we mentioned during last session, and this helps drive student instruction in the classroom. The ELD standards can be examined through 3 modalities, or how language is used. The different modalities represent the different ways language is used to communicate and understand information, and each modality supports various cognitive and linguistic processes and contributes to a more comprehensive development of language skills. Standards 1 and 8 primarily focus on receptive language. Standards 3, 4, and 7 focus primarily on productive language, and standards 2, 5, and 6 primarily focus on interactive language skills. So when thinking about text-based rigorous content, core action 1, task and questions, or core action 2, and student engagement, core action 3 in the classroom, tying language modalities, listening, speaking, reading, and writing to the instructional practice guide can help ensure that instruction in multilingual classrooms is comprehensive and aligned with best practices. The IPG focuses on core elements of effective teaching, planning instruction, and assessment, making a useful framework for incorporating these language modalities. So now let's talk about how we can use the Tennessee academic standards in conjunction with Tennessee ELD standards. How can educators blend Tennessee academic standards and ELD standards? Well, let's start by asking these questions. What is the language needed in service of learning the content standard? This is the first question that is essential for supporting English learners in accessing and mastering academic content. This question emphasizes the need for intentional focus on academic language development, which includes subject specific vocabulary, but also syntax and discourse practices. This approach bridges the gap between content knowledge and language proficiency, ensuring that language is not a barrier to understanding or expressing content mastery. If you can identify the language demands of a content standards, as a teacher, you can differentiate and scaffold instruction to meet the diverse needs of English learners at varying proficiency levels. This promotes equity and access for all students by allowing them to engage meaningfully with grade level material. Teachers can provide scaffolds such as sentence starters, visuals, modeling to help students practice language while learning content. This question number one, what is the language needed in service of learning the content? Also encourages intentional teaching of language form and language functions, how students again use language to express their idea. It creates opportunities for academic conversations in the classroom, allowing students to develop deeper content understanding through those structured discussions and collaboration. Asking this question ensures that instruction is equitable. When teachers plan for both content and language development, they provide English learners with scaffolds to access those same standards their native English speaking peers do. This helps avoid that common pitfall of like watering down the content and instead focuses on teaching the academic language needed to engage with the material fully. It promotes high expectations for all students. Ultimately, this practice is going to foster a more inclusive learning environment where students build both their language skills and their content knowledge simultaneously. It also ensures that students are equipped to succeed in academic settings and outside of the classroom. The second question we want to think about is what modality or modalities will students engage in during the classroom? Receptive, productive, or interactive? Each modality suggests and supports various cognitive and linguistic processes and contributes to a more comprehensive development of language skills. Here's why they're important. Holistic language development really helps engage students in all modalities, ensuring that they become proficient in both receptive, which is listening and reading, or productive, which is speaking and writing, language skills. This balance helps learners use language in diverse and meaningful ways. It also promotes cognitive engagement. Each modality activates different cognitive processes. For example, listening and reading engages comprehension skills, while speaking and writing require active production of language. Using multiple modalities promotes deeper cognitive engagement. It also helps students build that real world communication. In real life communication, people often need to switch between different language modalities fluently. For instance, listening to someone speak, which is listening, responding to them speaking, and then perhaps taking notes or writing down ideas. Students will need practice in all these modalities to handle these real world situations effectively. Looking at this question, what modalities will students engage? You're also supporting multimodal learning. People learn in various ways, and some might grasp concepts or language better through reading, while others through speaking or writing. Fostering all modalities accommodates different learning styles and strengths, making language learning more accessible and inclusive. It can also enhance critical thinking. Writing, for example, allows learners to process and organize their thoughts more deliberately, while speaking helps with spontaneous thinking and communication. Exposure to both of these modalities encourages critical thinking and problem solving through language. Finally, I want you to think about what students should know and be able to do at the end of the lesson, not just with content, but also with language. ELPA21.org, again, the website ELPA21.org, has two great resources that can help educators determine students' can do's. Achievement level descriptors, also known as reporting performance descriptors in the instructional learning plan, describes what students should know and be able to do in language by domain based on their language assessment scores. The proficiency level descriptors can help educators plan instruction and measure student progress towards reaching the appropriate proficiency for each level of language. By asking this question, number 3, what should students know and be able to do at the end of the lesson? And using these resources ensures that instruction is going to be purposefully targeted and aligned with clear language and content goals. By starting with the end in mind, backward design, like this question, helps teachers focus on the desired outcomes. What should students know? What should students be able to do with language and plan instruction that directly supports those outcomes? Again, a backward design approach emphasizes creating assessments based on these end goals before planning instruction. This alignment between instruction and assessment ensures that students are being taught the language skills they need to succeed, minimizing the gap between what is taught and what is tested. Additionally, backward design supports scaffolding, which is crucial in language learning, as students often have varying proficiency levels. It allows teachers to plan lessons with appropriate scaffolds and challenges tailored to individual needs, helping all students work towards the same language objectives. So let's put this all together now. Let's look at these two Tennessee fifth grade ELA standards. Take a moment to ask those questions we talked about. What is the language needed in service of learning the content standard? We can start by looking for the verbs of the standard. They usually identify the language function. Then ask what other academic content words students might need as you unpack this standard. Take a moment now to read them. So, answering this question, what is the language needed in service of learning the content standard? Did you say students should be able to report on a topic or present an opinion? For the second standard, did you decide write opinion pieces? These are the verbs of these standards. Next, let's look at what modality students will need to engage in. We know that students will be reporting and writing, so I'm going to look at the productive modality. Standards 3, 4, and 7 could address what I want students to know or be able to do at the end of the lesson. Take a look now at the top right corner of that chart, Productive Standards 3, 4, and 7. The learner is a speaker and or writer. It is planned or formalized output. The communication is set for a specified audience, has purpose, and generally abides by the rule of the genre or style. The learner has an opportunity to draft, get feedback, revise before publication or broadcast. This is the language the student will need to have in order to engage in this lesson of reporting on a topic or writing an opinion piece. So let's move to the third question. What should students be able to know or do at the end of the lesson? And how will the content standard be assessed? In looking at the productive modality, I see that ELD Standard 4 addresses what I'm seeking language-wise for my student. So if we look at grade 5, Standard 4, an ELL can construct grade appropriate oral or written claims and support them with reasoning and evidence. If it's a level 1 student, they could express an opinion about a familiar topic. Level 2, constructing a simple claim about a familiar topic, giving reasons to support the claim. Level 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, it builds in complexity and language. I'm looking to see what my students can use using this achievement level descriptors, again, also known as the reporting PLDs in the instructional learning plan. In part 2 of this series, we're going to take a look at how to plan rigorous text, tasks, and questions that meet the depth of the content and language standards while also asking students to do the cognitive lift as they engage in a lesson with their peers. Finally, if you've seen this presentation and or if you have more questions about ESL program compliance or assessment for English learners in Tennessee, please feel free to contact us. I'm Raven Cleveland. Dr. Hannah Gribble is their Title III and Migrant Educational Program Grant Manager. She can answer questions about compliance. Joanne Runyon is our Senior Director of Student Supports, Division of Special Education and Student Supports, and she can answer questions about Tennessee Pulse or about ESL programming as well. Nancy Williams is the Special Populations Coordinator in the Office of District and Schools, and it works in our assessment team. If you have questions about testing, please feel free to reach out to Nancy. As always, we like to hear from you. Please let me know that you've participated in this COP recording. This QR code will take you to a very short attendance and survey form. Thank you again for attending this Community of Practice session, Connecting English Learners Development and Tennessee State Standards Part 1. We hope that you can use this for training in your classroom, your school, or your district.